Let's get some folks fired up with which doesn't belong and why. We'll start with first-round offensive linemen from non-traditional schools. Trevor Penning from Northern Iowa, Tyler Smith from Tulsa, and Cole Strange from Chattanooga. Which doesn't belong and why?
I'll go the Sean McVay and Les Snead route, and I'll say Cole Strange, just because if you've got somebody who they really thought they might be able to target at 104, presuming Sean McVay was telling the truth when he said that, that's really interesting because it shows the amount of difference that, different teams are scouting. And usually I feel like teams have decent, comps on first round graded players or guys that they would feel comfortable drafting that high. So that one seems a little interesting to me.
I'm going to say Smith just because the expectation on the Cowboys, given their history of drafting offensive linemen and having them work out, is he's going to walk right through the door, step right into the lineup, and start and play well from day one. The pressure is definitely going to be on him in Dallas. All right, Panthers tackle Ike Ekwonu, Giants tackle Evan Neal, and Seahawks tackle Charles Cross. The three big names, the top 10 tackles. Which doesn't belong and why?
It's interesting because all three of these teams have questions at quarterback, right? But there are two that seem to have coach stability, front office stability, and one that doesn't. So with that, I'm going to go with Ike Ekwonu because you don't know what's going to happen with the Panthers going into 2023. I mean, is Matt Rule going to be there? Is Scott Fittersall going to be there? Is David Tepper going to get impatient? We don't know. So depending on what happens there, that could change the trajectory of Ekwonu's career. So at least with those other two guys, you at least feel like you've got some stability.
I'm going to say Ekwonu for a different reason because we've talked about my feelings about the draft. Guys should be able to pick their teams. They should be able to stay in their hometown if they want to. It worked out for Ekwonu. For Ekwonu and Aiden Hutchinson, two of the guys taken very early in the draft, they got to go to the teams they would have picked. And that's a great story when the planets line up that way. But Ekwonu went to NC State. He's from the Charlotte area. He was all into the idea, I'm going to be big part of the community. That's perfect for the Panthers. And the Lions. You get a highly talented player that helps you in a position of need and a guy who really wants to be there, who already knows the town and doesn't have to go through that adjustment of getting up to speed. I mean, it's a big thing for a young kid. You get dropped into a place you've never lived before. It's not going to be an issue for Hutchinson or for Ike Ekwonu. Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, and Lamar Jackson, veteran quarterbacks who have new offensive linemen. Which doesn't belong and why?
I'll go with Lamar Jackson, mainly because they traded away one of his primary pass catchers yesterday. And, Dak Prescott still got guys. Justin Herbert still got his top two guys, and Williams and Allen. But, when in terms of the passing game of Lamar Jackson, man, it's I don't know what's going to happen there. I really don't at this point.
I'm going to say Lamar Jackson because it was the WTF tweet from him that came after the Ravens drafted his new center, Tyler Linderbaum. Yeah. And it's so funny how football fans, and I appreciate the passion, but they'll always find, it's like politics now. You'll come up with the most outlandish things to justify whatever position you want to take. Like, we got to get that in one time before.
Yes, we got to get that, yeah.
He wasn't talking about Tyler. He wasn't talking about Tyler Linderbaum. Look, he posts WTF after they draft him. If he's upset with the fact that they didn't put pepperoni on the pizza he ordered from Domino's, probably a good point to explain why you're tweeting WTF, because people are going to assume there is a connection between that and a fairly significant event that happened for your football team on a night when you're already complaining about Hollywood Brown being traded. Anyway, I'm going to say, who did I say? I'm going to say Lamar Jackson just because he doesn't seem to be all that appreciative of the fact that the Ravens drafted an offensive lineman.
Yeah, well, it's going to be, as you said earlier today, an intimate relationship as long as they're not in shotgun.
Yeah. Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow, veteran quarterbacks whose teams went defense and, in some cases, multiple first-round defensive picks. Which doesn't belong and why out of those four?
Let's go with Aaron Rodgers, mainly because, again, you talk about primary pass catchers. You got Mahomes, who's still got Kelsey. Joe Burrow's still got Jamar Chase. Aaron Rodgers, what? Who's that guy that you go to on third down? We just don't know.
Yeah, I'm going to say Rodgers. I think the interview last night in his safe space with Pat McAfee was very telling. There were some questions that could have been asked, and I understand during an interview all sorts of stuff happens, especially when you're interviewing a strong personality like Aaron Rodgers, and he'll kind of dictate the flow. That's just kind of the way it goes. You sign on for that when you interview him. But there were some questions I would have liked to have known the answer to, like, do you regret choosing to come back? Would you have made a different decision if you had known Davante Adams was going to be there? There's a way you can, gingerly present that question to the great and powerful Wizard of Oz and get him to say something that wouldn't be completely worthless. There's just a lot of questions that came up to me after watching him talk about Davante Adams that really makes me wonder, is there friction still lingering between him and the front office? Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, Jets first-rounders, 3. Most first-rounders for the Jets since that 4-man first-round class of 2000. Which doesn't belong and why out of those 3?
I'm going to say Jermaine Johnson, and I don't like trying to put somebody down when they just got drafted. That doesn't feel good to me just as a human being. But if they had him rated so high on their draft board, right? Like they've been saying, oh, he was one of our top 8 players, top 10 players, whatever it is. And he falls all the way down to where he fell. There's a disconnect there between the way the Jets see him and the way the rest of the league sees him. So that's interesting to me, and we'll see how it works out. But it's kind of like the Raiders in 2019. They had 3 first-round picks in Furl and Jacobs and Abram, and now all 3 of them have had their options declined. So, look, in a few years, we're going to know whether or not this works.
And that's a great litmus test for whether or not a first-round draft pick pans out, is the 5th-year option picked up. And to go 0 for 3, the Raiders from 2019. Now, look, I think the Josh Jacobs decision has more to do with the new offensive scheme, that they're not going to value any running back in Las Vegas. They're going to have an entire core of guys that get plugged in based upon what the game plan is, like they did in New England. But still, that's not good. And you're right. Just because the Jets thought of Jermaine Johnson highly and he fell and they traded back in to get him, that doesn't mean he's going to be great. The Vikings had 3 first-round picks in 2013, Xavier Rhodes, Sharif Floyd, and Cordell Patterson. And Floyd dropped. Floyd was a surprise. He slid. Oh, that's great value. We had him highly rated, and he never panned out. So that's the other reality. No matter what you hear about, wow, we could have got him early, we could have got him late, or whatever, half these guys are still not going to pan out. And they were rated exactly what everybody thought they should have been, and there's still a 50-50 shot that it's not going to work.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.